Ah, Tetris. Is a game console really a game console without it? You can even play it on any old nugget with an LCD screen. This dirt cheap nugget? This reasonably priced nugget? Or this overpriced nugget that inexplicably still costs $140 US in 2023. Wikipedia cites the 2006 version as the third best-selling video game in the world, next to Minecraft and GTA V. But if you want to play Tetris on the Nintendo Entertainment System, you're spoiled for choice. Classic Tetris World Championships go by Nintendo's version.
Boom, Tetris for Jeff.
While lots of NES collectors swear that Tengen blew it out of the water.
Yeah. Overall, I would say the Tengen version is better.
There's also the BPS version, but it's not worth your time. But what are the differences? And which one is the superior one? I'm Haley, and in this video, I'll be comparing and contrasting Tengen's unlicensed version of Tetris for the NES and Nintendo's official version of Tetris for the NES. But first, some background. I'll keep this brief because every other comparison video between Tengen and Nintendo explains this in great detail. 1988, Atari releases Tetris in arcades. May 1989, Tengen, which is Atari's home console division, releases a port for NES without Nintendo's permission. November 1989, Nintendo also releases a version for NES and sues Atari. The court rules that only Nintendo could legally release Tetris on home consoles while only Atari could legally make arcade versions. Tengen's version is then recalled. This was devastating news for Sega since they had an arcade version of their own, and the Genesis port never came out until 2019 on the Genesis Mini. We won't be talking about Sega anymore though. Now then, let's compare! Tengen has 5 game modes: single player, multiplayer, co-op, versus computer, and co-op with computer, while Nintendo has 2 game modes: A-type, which is the one everyone knows, and B-type, which fills the bottom of the matrix with random rubble, and you have to work around them to clear 25 lines. Note that Tengen will let you add rubble with the handicap option, but the game goes on indefinitely, not just 25 lines. Now, almost every video review I've seen ranks Tengen over Nintendo in terms of gameplay because there are more modes. Well, it's true that the Tengen version is the only option if you want to play multiplayer Tetris on the NES, asterisk. Having more modes doesn't mean that the modes are good. In fact, Nintendo has 2 modes that are purely single player, while Tengen only has 1, not counting the modes with computer players because they're bad at this. Though according to the Cutting Room Floor, using this Game Genie code on the Nintendo version lets you play an unfinished version of the multiplayer versus mode, which means that multiplayer was planned for the Nintendo version at some point, but was scrapped for one reason or another. In fact, there's a library of patches called TAUS that builds on that code for a multiplayer experience. So if you have a flashcard or play on an emulator like a heathen, you definitely should use the multiplayer patch. Or if you're not restricted to using a physical NES, you can always play Classic Score Attack on Tetris Effect Connected, which is the frame-accurate recreation of Nintendo's version. Tengen was one of the first versions of Tetris to feature cooperative play. Cooperative is in heavy air quotes here. First of all, the piece you control has collision with the piece the other player controls, which guarantees that you two will get into each other's way. Frustrating. Also, if we're supposed to be on the same side, why are our line counts counted separately on either side? Doesn't that go against the ethos of cooperation? This mode feels half-baked. Now, while I understand that the NES has limited processing power and sophisticated algorithms were an impossibility, but gosh, does the AI suck in this! It never soft drops, it reconsiders its move only when you drop a piece, and it doesn't take your piece into account, so it can cover a hole where you can clear a Tetris, for example. None of this is an issue in, for example, Connected Battle from Tetris Effect Connected. Your piece isn't affected by gravity when it's not your turn, and it doesn't have collision with the other player's pieces, only with the board. While the cooperative thing is only a small part of the Connected Battle mode, it's a massively better execution of the co-op concept. Now let's take a look at a core part of Tetris' gameplay. That's rotation, baby! Here's a T-block with its flat side to the right. Where do you think the block will be when you rotate it clockwise? Obviously, here. Now, where do you think the block will be when you rotate it clockwise again? Here? That's correct! In the Nintendo version. In Tengen's version, it ends up here. But why?
911, what's your emergency?
I'd like to report a violation of the laws of geometry. They hung up on me. Tengen's version uses something that we call Atari rotation system. For some reason, every rotation state of every piece, except for vertical I, is aligned by its top left corner instead of its geometric center. So that means the T-piece is nudged to the left when the flat side is to the left, and nudged to the top when its flat side is to the top. The same problem happens with the L and J pieces. In contrast, Nintendo's version uses something that we call right-handed Nintendo rotation system, which rotates pieces closer to their apparent geometric center. Much nicer and more intuitive, don't you think? Even this nugget gets it right. Other than that, there are several noticeable quirks with Tengen's gameplay that aren't present in Nintendo's. Tengen's soft drop has acceleration and takes a bit of time to kick in, which feels sluggish and unresponsive most of the time. Nintendo's soft drop starts immediately, which is snappy and much less frustrating. Tengen gives you a little intermission after a set number of line clears, 30 and then 50, and changes the color palette of the board. While it's a nice touch for theming, it ultimately starts to get annoying. And it's jarring when you're tossed back into the board, which you couldn't see during the intermission. Nintendo just plays a jingle and lets you keep going. Less interesting, but more streamlined. I prefer Nintendo. When you pause the game on the Tengen version, you can still see the pieces, which makes it trivially easy to cheat. Nintendo's version hides the entire screen, which makes it harder to cheat. Moreover, Tengen's version only has sound effects for when the piece solidifies. Nintendo's version has sound effects for moving and rotation, in addition to that, which makes the gameplay feel responsive as well. Speaking of sound, Tengen's Tetris has 4 different songs, while Nintendo's Tetris has 3. But as with game modes, more songs doesn't mean better songs. Let's first listen to Nintendo's offerings. Music 1 is an arrangement of Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy by Tchaikovsky. It's a great arrangement that brings out the strengths of the NES sound chip, and it's been remixed for Tetris Effect Connected's classic Scoretech mode, which slaps. Music 2 is this vaguely Russian-sounding original composition. This is my personal favorite. It's more fast-paced and hectic than Music 1, so it's more conducive to the need to think fast in Tetris. Music 3 is this thing. Oh no, this is too slow-paced for something like Tetris. I'd expect this kind of music to appear in games where you can take a big breath and contemplate your next move, like Lunar Pool, or Wheel of Fortune, or Where's Waldo. Now, in contrast, the Tengen soundtrack can be best described as if the Red Army Choir was entirely screaming Tamagotchi. First, we have Loginska. This is by far the longest, most varied song in the game, taking 1.5 minutes to loop, and half a minute to get to the looping point. If you plan to play the game long enough to get all the statistics bars to the top, this is probably the one to choose. Next up is Brudzinski. Same concept, some Tamagotchi Red Army stuff. Not much of a difference between this and Loginska, except that this one is consistently at a fast tempo. Third in line, we have Karinka. That's Kalinka 1860 by Ivan Larionov, misspelled in the menu. I really hate the voicing of this entire song, especially in the chorus. You can hear the voices more clearly separated in the BPS version through different note lengths. It's also the shortest song in the game, and it loops in only 21 seconds. I measured. Finally, we have Troika. That's another old Russian piece called Vot Mchitsia Troika Pochtovaya. Apparently, the original lyrics are about a guy who rides 3 horses to deliver mail who got cucked by a rich man. Interesting choice of soundtrack. Again, the BPS version did it better. So, why does Nintendo's music sound less grating than Tengen's? Let's look at the waveform of just one instrument and find out. This is from Tengen's music. As you can see, all the notes are either at full volume or not at all. The only instrument that has decay is the single percussion instrument that's used in every single song. This makes the song sound bland and grating. This is from Nintendo's music. Not only can you clearly see the decay of the note, you can see that there are sections with different dynamics. The waveform is a bit more complex than a straight square wave too, which gives the song a bit of pleasant texture compared to Tengen's music. So Nintendo wins in terms of gameplay and sound design, but what about aesthetics? Tengen goes the whole 8.2296 meters with the Soviet Russia theme. In other words, game is Russian as beer drinking, vodka driving tick. St. Peter's Basilica front and center in the title screen, the little Russian dancers in the intermission, all the Russian-themed music, it harkens back to the days of a Cold War that I was too unborn to live through. On the other hand, the transition from Atari's arcade version to Tengen's NES port has left a couple unpolished corners, besides the music I just talked about. The arcade version gives all the pieces a unique color, which persists after they land. The NES version, though, turns them into a single color after they land. This is because the NES can only have 3 unique colors plus background per 2x2 tile area. The NES can also only use 4 unique color palettes in the background, so it's impossible to fully preserve the arcade version's graphics, which have 3 × 7 = 21 unique colors in the background. The Nintendo version, though, was designed around this restriction. Sure, there are only 3 unique block colors, but it ends up looking more vibrant because it plays well with the NES's hardware restrictions. On the other hand, while the Nintendo version does have some Soviet motifs, it's constrained to the title screen and the cutscenes. The menus and background focus more on the blocks themselves and give off an industrial vibe. While it's entirely a matter of opinion which one is better, you can see why the Tengen version was subtitled The Soviet Mind Game and the Nintendo version wasn't. If you want to go for Soviet vibes, go for Tengen. In conclusion, I think Nintendo has the better version of Tetris by far, and with the multiplayer patch, it makes the Tengen version obsolete, save for nostalgia value. Because really, why would you want to play Tetris on an NES, when you could now play it on any smartphone, console, or laptop? For me, it's an escape from the hyper-connected, microtransaction-riddled world of mobile games, a vacation to a simpler time, where developers' goal was to provide the most bang for a buck, not to wring out the most buck with the least bang. Tetris also shares the ubiquity and mass appeal of Doom. Some versions of Doom are impressive because it runs on things that shouldn't run it, but a lot of them aren't very fun, be it because it's slow, low resolution, or lacking vertical terrain. Maybe sometimes you want to play Doom Eternal, other times the MS-DOS original, but I'd be hard-pressed to find anyone saying that their favorite version of Doom is Texas Instruments. The sheer number of modes in Tengen's Tetris is impressive, but its gameplay has not aged well today. Nintendo's Tetris, though, still has an active community today. Even back in '89, Nintendo's programmers knew how to make a game feel satisfying to control and play. It's the polish and satisfaction that the Nintendo seal of quality represents. Basically, Nintendo wins. It's not just the lawsuit that made Nintendo's Tetris, and not Tengen's Tetris, an enduring classic. It's 'cause Tengen's version freaking sucks!